So, guys, I want to review AEW for last night, and I do want to say that I think the only thing that I really want to talk about is the Darby Allin decision. Because if you've not known already, um, after AEW Dynasty, a few days after that, they decided to make Darby Allin the AEW champion, and there's a lot of just feelings about this. There's some good things and there's some bad things about it, and I do want to talk about the good things first. I think there's the majority of it is bad stuff, but I think what I'm going to talk about the good things are that first of all, there is a rumor that MJF is going out to film a movie, and some people don't know this about Swerve Strickland, but Swerve is taking time off to go film a movie, so that's good and bad in two ways. Like that kind of shows that Tony's a good boss, because a lot of times in WWE, wrestlers quit because they're not allowed to have movie opportunities or anything like that. And then the other thing too is that maybe there are some wrestlers that feel that they may have a better career in Hollywood. So sometimes what WWE will do be like, okay, if we allow you to take time off to go film a movie, we got to get some money out of it. Or sometimes they'll say, no, you're not doing the project really. So I appreciate Tony for allowing his wrestlers to do that. I think that it's good that if wrestlers want to pursue filmmaking, no problem. But I also understand the other side of, well, MJF took time off. He just came back in December. Now he might take off a little bit more time. That's just not good, really. The second good thing about this is that they're trying to create goodwill in Washington, because when they did Wrestle Dream a few years ago, and then they had Bryan Danielson get beamed down by the Death Riders, it really pissed off the Washington crowd. So I think like tonight, just having Sting there, showing Nick Wayne in a good light, and just having Darby win, and featuring Kevin Knight, like all the Washington people, wrestlers from the state of Washington, you're trying to create goodwill and say, hey, we want to come back, we want to do shows in Washington, but we need to kind of create goodwill with the audience, really. So that was definitely a good decision. And then also, too, one of the reasons why Dynasty happened in Vancouver was because they pissed off the Seattle crowd 2 years ago. And one of the reasons why they did Wrestle Dream in St. Louis last year was because of what happened with Wrestle Dream 2024 pissing off people. And then the next thing that I want to say, I think this is one of the big things, is versatility. Because one thing that I hate about professional wrestling is long title runs. Sometimes it's appropriate, but I do feel it's very overused. Like, I do remember, for example, in TNA wrestling, I think they had Bobby Roode was like the champion for almost a year, but he always cheated every single time. Or Kurt Angle was a champion for over a year. And I didn't like those super long title runs. Or I remember with Roman Reigns in WWE, like some people actually stopped watching because they felt 3 years was too long. But in AEW, they kind of overly abused super long title runs. Like we all remember with Moxley, from like October all the way to mid-July. That was the worst title run they ever had, really. And they kind of kept drawing it out because they were like, we want the big moment of the Cowboy winning in Texas, really. So I appreciate them saying not every title run needs to be super long, because if you have super long title runs all the time, it's you may be so repetitive with your audience, and then the other thing becomes predictable. It says, okay, well, at All In every single year, more than likely the title's going to change. So we need some versatility. And I think the next and final thing to say about it is, two more things. I think the next thing is that there's really no story for Double or Nothing. So I kind of say to myself, with MJF losing the title, and some of my coworkers are talking about this, he's going to be hell-bent to gain the title. And then also, he is from Long Island, and Queens is not that far from Long Island. And I'm from the Upper East Side, really. So, Darby Allin's going to have to face MJF in a rematch. That could be one of the options. And he's going to have New York City on his ass, really. It's Seattle versus New York City, and we all know we all know what's going to happen, really. He's going into the Lions' Den. He's going to the New York City. He's going to the den of Giants, really. The New York City Giants, really. So, it gives you an idea of a story. You can do something where MJF gets pissed off, he attacks Sting, he attacks Sting's son, and then Darby gets mad, and then Darby's like, you know what, I really want to do, I really want to get back at MJF, really. And I also think that, the other thing about this, so you can tell a good story from this. They can make a compelling story. And then there's two other things I want to talk about that are positives. One of the big things is that Darby Allin has done a lot of stuff to his body, so you never know when he could be champion. If you want to feel like, okay, we want to give him a championship run, we want to kind of do something with Darby, before he kind of retires or before his body gives out, give him time to be a champion, like get it out of the way, really. So I can understand that perspective of, okay, let's try it. And then the last, I think, benefit of this is this changes Double or Nothing, because one of the repetitive things about Blood and Guts and Anarchy in the Arena is Darby Allin's always involved, and he cannot be involved in every single thing, because the problem is if you always put him in Blood and Guts or in Anarchy in the Arena, it's saying that what is Darby Allin? Is he a professional wrestler or is he a deathmatch wrestler? Is he a professional wrestler or is he a stuntman wrestler? He needs to do more wrestling than stuntman shit, and also more deathmatch shit. That's part of his personality, but sometimes he has to not go there, really, because if he does it all the time, then he might as well join Combat Zone Wrestling, or he might as well talk to Tony and talk about buying Combat Zone Wrestling, and then they have that as like a Friday night show or something like that. But the point of it is that he needs to show the audience. I mean, it helps him not have an Anarchy in the Arena match. And then also, too, if they do Anarchy in the Arena, it would not make sense for MGF and Darby Allin to have a death match or whatever at Double or Nothing, because people are going to say you can't have multiple hardcore matches on one show, really, because if you do that, you're going to say it's too repetitive to the audience. So a couple other things I want to say is I want to talk about the bad side of this. The reason why this is bad is that MJF has been doing a great job as a champion, really. So this really undercuts a lot of his momentum. And a lot more people are talking about taking off the title, hurts MJF, really. And what message does that send? Because MJF, there's so many people who want to be world champion now. MJF is picking people like Bandito, Kevin Knight, Speedball Mike Bailey, Brody King, and he's actually working really hard to make these guys bigger deals, really. And because they step up, and then he kind of gives them a platform to step even higher. And they've all benefited from working with him. So what message does that send? Well, you are making people stand out as stars. You are rebuilding in our heavyweight division. We kind of have a better idea of who is a heavyweight wrestler in AEW, like who's going after the major title, really. Whenever MJF has a match with anybody, like if you did MJF versus Tommaso Ciampa, MJF versus Konosuke Takeshita, MJF versus Yota Tsuji at Forbidden Door, MJF versus like that, I don't remember his name, but he's the NJPW champion right now. He was trained by Will Ospreay. You put MJF in the main event of that show against any of those guys, it elevates them. And then also you can do MJF versus Hachishiro at Forbidden Door, or MJF versus Okada. But there's always, with MJF, he's done a great job of being a wrestler. He's done a great job of being that guy that elevates other people. And I honestly think that Tony should pay him a little bit more money and to be like, okay, I need to help. He needs to be a coach to other wrestlers and be like, oh, I need to grab you aside. This is how we're going to do it. This is what you need to do the next couple of months to kind of go on a big trajectory. Because, MJF, he could die tomorrow. He can go to Hollywood tomorrow. He can buy a scratch-off ticket, win a lot of money. He cannot be there tomorrow. But he has to but one of the goals of MJF and Tony Khan should be making sure MJF can help other wrestlers in AEW create a foundation, because professional wrestling is great when all the wrestlers are organized and they stand out and divisions are being built and stuff like that. He's really building the heavyweight division when it was like a lost clusterfuck for a very long time, really. So so it's kind of like a fuck you to MJF that he lost the title. I think the next thing that I would say about it is Darby Allin has not proven himself to be a professional wrestler. And what I mean by that is that when you have the fish tank match, when you see him with a flamethrower, he's more of a stunt man. And he's also more of a, how should I kind of put this? He's more of a death match wrestler. I think that that's the best term. He's more of a death match wrestler than a regular professional wrestler. And that's not a good thing because, as some people say, death match wrestling, hardcore wrestling, and all that stuff, that it has a place in professional wrestling. In my opinion, it should be there because not everything should be PG WWE shit. The other reason why you need that is versatility, and then the other reason is that sometimes there are some matches and feuds where it's taken up to 10 really, and you need to say we need something bigger than just a regular match, like Undertaker Mankind. That worked so well in the Hell in a Cell match, like Undertaker Shawn Michaels, or even like the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes. That needed a stipulation. So there is a place for death matches and hardcore wrestlers. And then the other thing is it's freedom of speech because it says that wrestling doesn't have to be one way, really. This is not WWE and the Muppets. Wrestling can be in multiple ways, really. So deathmatch wrestling, hardcore wrestling, that all has a place in professional wrestling. But the problem is when you are a wrestler of a major wrestling company, you can't just do one style of wrestling. Like I said, that one good thing about Bully Ray was when he was the champion in TNA wrestling, he was not throwing somebody through a table every single week. When Jeff Hardy was the champion in WWE and TNA, he was not doing dumb shit like, okay, every match he has to have has to be a ladder spot. But with Darby, he's had so many matches and he's known for doing crazy shit. And a few weeks ago, he put Gabe Kidd in a car and they did a flip and almost destroyed that vehicle, whatever. You've proven to me so many times that Darby Allin needs to kind of stop being he needs to kind of step away from the hardcore deathmatch shit because he needs to show he can do more than that. He can do a full spectrum of different things, really, not just the hardcore shit. And I also think that so I think but he's not proven that to me. I think he's done way so much hardcore shit that that's his identity when he has to do other things. There's also the other side of it as well, really, is if you put the title back on MJF at Double or Nothing, that's kind of bad in a way because it kind of is very anticlimactic, really, for two reasons. That number one, Darby Allin should be a champion for like maybe 3 or 4 months, really, with the right title run and the right winning of the title, really. I don't want to see him just be champion for like a month and it's like, okay, then he's just going to be floating on the roster. He really needs to get something out of it, really. And I also kind of say to myself, another criticism is what's going to be the main event of Wembley Stadium, because a lot of people are saying Ospreay MJF is the match that they should have, and I agree with that. But you can do Darby Allin, MJF, and Ospreay. That could be a great main event. Or you can do something where it's Darby Allin and Ospreay, but I don't think that has the same feel to it. I think you almost need MJF because he has the character, he has the voice, he has the storytelling, he has all these things that make him stand out, really. I think with Darby, he has heart, but he doesn't have that much storytelling. And then I think the other thing to talk about with Darby Allin is, like I said, you kind of wonder how it's going to play out to make him a long-term champion. I think the other thing that I want to say about Darby Allin is that he's half-baked, like the half-baked Ben and Jerry's, because honestly, I like what I Am Zayn was saying and Russell Tide and a few other people, where and even like Off the Mic Sports Network, which is maybe Darby Allin should be an AEW champion, but he needs the right story and the right build. Like if I was booking it, I would have Darby Allin's go on a losing streak, and then maybe at Forbidden Door, he loses, and then at World's End, he gains the title. Like I think that you need a little bit more time with Darby. He goes on a redemption thing. He's more mature. He actually takes less risks in the ring. He chooses to say, hey, you know what? Part of me is daredevil. Part of me is taking high risks. But there are times when the way to win a match is to just be thought out. Really, don't be an adrenaline junkie. Just to show more of what his personality can do and stuff like that. So I think telling that story would be stronger. I think that story will be stronger. Will be a way stronger thing, really, to tell, really. But you don't have that. And then also tonight, even when you did the promo packages, you didn't really. You didn't really do anything but recap a couple of things that have happened past a couple of months with Darby Allin. Really, I appreciate his passion when he said something like, he went out, hung flyers for AEW. I'm only gonna get over. I chose that I'm gonna succeed or fail as Darby Allin. That hit my heart as well, really, because there's so many people who had to change who they are to be successful, and then there's some people saying, no, fuck you. I am Darby Allin. I will die as Darby Allin. This is what Darby Allin does. And there's a lot of just respect for something like that, because obviously we should all be ourselves, really. Sometimes we need to change things about ourselves to be successful. Sometimes we have bad things in our personalities where we need to make some changes. But that's true, really. It's very, very true. But I think that they could tell the bigger story if they had Darby Allin actually just become champion a little bit later in time, really. And I also think one of the big things that is talked. Also, the biggest talking points is two things. I think one positive, if I'm not said already, is that because they fucked up Wrestle Dream 2024, they're trying to create goodwill, so that's why they had everybody there. I think I might mention that, but I think another thing about Darby Allin that's a criticism is that he went to climb Mount Everest. I think last year was the opportunity to win the title either at World's End or in Texas, but they gave it to Hangman because Darby Allin decided to go climb Mount Everest. So ultimately, and I'm going to have to say this, this may be mean, but this is the truth, it was a very selfish decision. And there's times in my life, I've made some very selfish choices. I travel, I live with my brother, I pay him good rent, but I'm 38 years old still living with my brother, and I might need some more time because I have some debt to pay. So I understand that sometimes there's things that we're passionate about, there's some things that we like and do, but ultimately we have to think about, other people. Honestly, he was not thinking about the fans, he was not thinking about AEW, he was thinking about his lifelong goal, even though he planted the AEW flag, really. Darby Allin climbing Mount Everest was just really the only thing that ever benefited was Darby Allin's bucket list and nothing else, really. And also when he climbed Mount Everest, there was no national attention, but obviously if he died on Mount Everest, that would create a lot of national attention, a lot of bad attention, really. So ultimately his decision to climb Mount Everest, even though it's very inspirational, it was very, very selfish, and ultimately nobody really gives a shit that he climbs Mount Everest. If we want to be really honest, that was not national news. It's not like this groundbreaking thing in professional wrestling. You don't see John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, and anybody like that just congratulating him. He climbed it, and nobody really gave a fuck. And I'm really sorry to say that, but I've accomplished many things in my life. I worked over 14,000 hours on my job. I went to Tokyo with my lifelong goal. I've done amazing things with my life. I graduated college with 2 degrees. I remember writing a book, and I remember I didn't even have a graduation party. But there's times in my life where I've accomplished shit, and my family or nobody else gives me attention for it. And that's the same thing with Darby Allin. He accomplished something very, 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 very rare and very, very challenging in climbing Mount Everest. And I respect him for that. But he also has to understand that did nothing for professional wrestling other than really fuck up AEW. And that was a very self decision of him and Tony Khan, really. So ultimately, why should that behavior get rewarded? Why should that be rewarded when part of the big mess of Jon Moxley was Darby Allin not being there? So he's accountable for that, and now I give him a championship. And I think that the other thing that I will say is I'm a little worried about Double or Nothing and Forbidden Door, because and also Blood and Guts, because the problem with Darby Allin is he's known for being crash Texas tummy or a deathmatch wrestler. So what's going to happen at Double or Nothing? Because I'm a little afraid they're going to do a women's Anarchy in the Arena match, a men's Anarchy in the Arena match, and then they're going to have MJF versus Darby Allin in a hardcore death match type of thing, really. You can't have multiple hardcore matches on the same show. This is not Combat Zone Wrestling. And then the other part of it is Forbidden Door. Like, you might even do Will Ospreay and his team of the United Empire versus the Death Riders in Blood and Guts or something like that. And then you could say, hey, what about MJF and Darby Allin? They can kind of do some hardcore shit. Or you can do, like, maybe an exploding barbed wire death match, because that's part of Japanese wrestling. That's Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, that's Japanese wrestling. So now you're having a show with two, like, hardcore matches, really. Or what would happen if you do a triple threat of Darby Allin, Will Ospreay, and MJF at Wembley Stadium? You might turn that to a hardcore, violent fuckery match. And then, again, last year you had a Texas death match. Now this year you're doing a violent fuckery match. And as I said with Darby Allin, it may fans may want that from him. That may be the best thing for him, or it may be encouraged that he does that when he may be maybe he should be shown more versatility or want some more versatility. But you have a wrestler that's very, like, pro deathmatch and other shit like that. So I think that's also another concern, that you have some shows coming up this summer that people know and expect to have death matches or hardcore off the wall shit, really. So now you're going to have a heavyweight championship with the exact same stuff. And then also another problem is, like, last year you did so many hardcore matches. Like, Revolution 2025, you had the Hollywood ending, Will Ospreay steel cage match, and that was part of a triple main event. And then at Dynasty, last year in Philadelphia, 2025, what was it? Swerve put Mox through a table. Anarchy in the Arena was one of the main events of Double or Nothing last year. And then you had Allin, the Texas Death Match. And then at the O2 Forbidden Door, you had the Lights Out match. And then you had Darby Allin versus John Moxley at Wrestle Dream. The I Quit match, the fishing tank thing. You have a steel cage match with Hangman and Samoa Joe. You had a Fatal 4-Way, which is technically a hardcore match. And then at Revolution 2026, you had a Texas death match. Like, every single, majority of the AEW pay-per-views in the last year have been hardcore matches, or what would constitute a hardcore death match stipulation, really. Now you have a champion in Darby who is very pro deathmatch, very pro stunt show, very pro hardcore, and taking shit too far, really. So I kind of wonder how's that going to help AEW, because a lot of people are going to say it's repetitive, it's the same old shit, really. And then there's some people who say, that's not real professional wrestling, that's just shock value shit. So I do kind of wonder, what are they going to do with Darby as champion? What matches is he going to have? Is this going to be lead to pay-per-views with multiple hardcore matches, or ending with multiple, like, death match stipulations? And they've done that to death, really. And then the other, final thing I'll say is that Darby Allin is just a small guy, really. And I really hate saying this, if he and I were to have a fight, I would win. If he and I were both to have fisticuffs, I would be more believable because I'm a bigger guy. I weigh 250 pounds. Darby weighs a little less than me. He's kind of skinny ass, really. Like, there's people like Mark Davis that look like a more credible champion than Darby Allin. So it kind of goes down to, what I worry about with AEW. They may make Kevin Knight the AEW champion. They may make Mike Bailey the AEW champion, but your champions cannot always be tiny people, because that just looks ridiculous. Sometimes you need that, and sometimes you don't need that. Like with WWE, they made Rey Mysterio the heavyweight champion. They also made Jeff Hardy the heavyweight champion. They made Bryan Danielson. But also we know that The Big Show, Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, Kane, Great Khali, Mark Henry, a few other people were heavyweight champions. But with AEW, they can't be like only small people, because it's almost like like legitimately, if you have Bobby Lashley on the roster, and Bobby Lashley's strong enough to lift the Big Show, he lifted Viscera, Big Daddy V, 500 pounds. You have people like Claudio Castagnoli who did the big swing on the Big Show. Really, you had Powerhouse Hobbs, who should have been AEW champion, but he slammed the Big Show. So you have these wrestlers on your roster, and we've seen videotapes of MJF lifting like maybe 300, 400 pounds, really. So you have these wrestlers that are big, that can lift big people, or are big people wrestlers. And what does it say about your roster when the person on top of the company is skinny ass Darby Allin? It makes you kind of wonder, maybe next year at spring break, since they're in a pattern of surprise championship. Last year was a trios title, now it's a heavyweight title. What would happen if you made Orange Cassidy the champion? Because that would be a bad thing, and Orange Cassidy should never become a champion because he's too much of a clown wrestler. So it kind of makes you wonder where they're going with Darby and everything like that. And I would say wholeheartedly, my opinion, I'm not for this decision. I think that Darby should be the heavyweight champion. MGF is the most synonymous guy with AEW. Darby Allin is second place. I do not consider Chris Jericho or anybody who has established their legacy in other companies. But the most synonymous wrestler to AEW right now is MJF. The second person is Darby Allin. But with that all said, really, that's why I think he should be champion. And then it also says something that he's one of the four pillars. Sammy Guevara fucked it up for himself. Jungle Boy fucked it up for himself times two, really. But it's good that the two people who are good four pillars are actually, people who are two of the four pillars actually kind of made it and are successful, really. So, as I said, I really, really kind of wonder what the future of is with AEW with Darby Allin as the champion, really. And as I said, I think the smart thing to do is give it back to Max at Double or Nothing, really. Like as I said, like derail and then get back on the Money match, which is Will Ospreay versus MJF at AEW Wrestle Dream. I know at AEW All In. And then maybe what you do at Forbidden Door is you can do Yota Tsuji versus MJF, or Hatchisir versus MJF, or you can do Okada versus MJF, or Takeshita versus MJF, or even Kyle Fletcher versus MJF. Like take like maybe a NJPW or former NJPW person and have them face MJF, really. Like the big money person is MJF, and hopefully they just understand that that's where they should be with AEW, really. So it's a controversial decision. Very, very controversial decision. I don't think it was the right decision. It's not going to kill the company, but ultimately, we have to see where it goes from here.